I've given all my dowels away, so I'm using a rolling pin. Works great. Ideally, we have 2 blocks, but you can make do without. We want some type of strap, and if you have anything weighted, you know me, I love my salt bags, but whatever you got, bag of rice, bag of pasta, whatever you have is fabulous. We're gonna have our knees together, our feet together. We're gonna take our stick, whatever kind of stick we have, onto our ankles. If we don't have a stick, we could use a block. And then we're gonna come down just nice and slow, 1 disc, 1 vertebra at a time, nice and slow. Good. And then when we arrive, we're gonna see if we can lift our ankles, keeping the stick balanced on our ankles. We're gonna interlace our fingers over the shins. We're gonna lift our elbows up just slightly, and let's start to find our belly breath. So with each inhale, we want to feel the belly expanding, broadening. And with each exhale, we want to feel our belly sinking, shrinking, contracting. So last week, we looked a lot at the belly breath, about breaking it down into 3 floors and putting 3 rooms on each one of those floors. And so we'll do a little bit of review with that today. If you've interlaced your fingers, swap the interlacing of your fingers, swap the digits as we continue to breathe into our belly. Let's take 5 more big belly breaths, just like that. When those 5 breaths are complete, you're going to remove your stick, you're going to place it on the floor, bring your feet down. You're going to take your block, and you're going to place it between your heels and your butt. You're going to have your knees wide, and you're going to pull the heels back towards the butt, squeezing the block. You're going to have the entire sole of the foot on the floor, and your knees wide in a creeper pose. So in the creeper pose, the trick is to keep the big toe edge of the foot on the floor. And then we're going to take a weight if we have it. If we don't have a weight, we can use a block. And we're going to put that from the pubic bone to the navel and to the hip. So my weight is kind of like a square. So I have 1 point going down over my pubic bone, 1 coming over my hip flexors, and 1 coming up to my navel. I'm then going to lift up my pelvis. I'm going to slide my hands underneath my pelvis. So I want to have my index fingers touching, my thumbs touching, my fingers kind of spread so that my hands are feeling the very lowest part of my spine. My tailbone, my pelvis, sort of the right side and the left side evenly. And the habit here is to kind of imprint the low back. So once we find the hands underneath the body, we're going to lengthen the pubic bone away from the navel to find a little bit of a lumbar curve. So we're kind of setting ourselves up for optimum positioning, neutral spine, so that we can breathe a little deeper. And we're going to start just with that belly breath. So as we inhale, we want to think about the belly expanding down into the floor to start with. And then let the breath move from the hands through the mid body to the front body, maybe even lifting the block or the weight on the front of the abdomen. And then as we exhale, think about the entire belly evenly contracting. So not necessarily doing it in waves or going from side to side, but almost like a balloon emptying. The breath is leaving from all the spaces, evenly, simultaneously. Focusing on your body from the inside, focusing on your breath. Thinking about breathing from the tailbone to the top of the pelvis, from the right hip to the left hip. Let's take 10 more full deep breaths here. When those 10 breaths are complete, bring your knees together, lift your pelvis, let your hands come out beside you, palms facing up. Keep your heels quite close to that block if you can. Allow the soles of the feet to actually come together, clapping, and allow the knees to come apart. So coming into a full cobbler. By keeping the big toe edge of the foot active and not letting the feet peel, we're putting a little bit of a boundary on our hips that can be very, very helpful. We're then going to take our hands and we're going to hold our hip flexors. So you're going to have your fingers around the front of your hip flexors and your thumbs around the sides so that we're actually holding onto our hips. If at any point it feels like too much for our knees or our hips to have our legs wide, we just bring the soles of the feet onto the floor again into a creeper pose. So now that we've found the breath into the back body, calling the breath into the front body, let's think about breathing into those hip flexors a little bit. So your thumbs are on the outside, so you want to think about breathing laterally out to the sides, up to the ceiling, and down to the floor. You've got that block kind of between your heels and your pelvic floor. Think about breathing into the basement of the bottom floor of that belly breath and breathing towards that block. Be patient, not everything is meant to make sense the first 100 times you hear it, but if we can find even just a fraction of more breath into that lower abdominal area, that's fabulous. And if we can hold on to that fraction of more breath when we leave this studio today, your little home studio, then that's a piece of the puzzle that you can have forever if you choose to practice that for the next week. Trying to remember which area of your body is most challenging to breathe into as we work on the belly breath, and starting with that space. And then let the breath expand from the weakest point of the lower abdominal breath to the strongest point. And then with the exhale, allow the exhale to be a little less controlled and just allow the breath to slowly empty. Listening to your hips and your knees. If you need to put your feet on the floor, do. As we start to focus on our nostrils, we're going to expand our nostrils. So our nostrils have an erectile function that if we don't use it, we lose it. So we want to think about almost like a bowl, as if we've got marbles in the holes of our nostrils and we're trying to drop those marbles. So we've got little stones in our nostrils and we're trying to expand our nostrils away from those little stones. And then we expand our nostrils from where they open to where they inject into the skull. Breathing in and out through the nostrils and really trying to make that breath as smooth and even as humanly possible. Let's take 10 more big belly breaths just like this. And when those 10 breaths are complete, let your arms come beside you. Let the breath become natural and no longer controlled. And just feel what it's like to have that weight on your abdomen. If you don't have a weight, that's okay, but it's starting to help us connect with that sense of Samanavayu, where from pubic bone to hip bone to navel, it's like there's a heavy weight there, gently rooting our abdomen down and then sliding our abdomen up underneath the front rib cage. Just feeling what that feels like. Then going to the outer line of the leg, from the outer knee to the outer hip to the outer ankle, and like a book closes, the entire outer line of the leg is going to lift up and bring the knees to one another. Good stuff. And then we're going to come into the counter stretch, which is snow plow. So knees are going to touch and we're going to heel toe the feet apart. We're going to find the baby toe edge of the foot and we're going to almost feel like we're pigeon toeing to bring the baby toe edge of the foot to straight. We're going to lift our head. We're going to see if our knees are level. We're going to see if our heels are equal distance from our pubic bone so that we're not consistently always being a little shorter on one groin than the other, but we're evenly opening up our hips. So here there's a very, very strong tendency to imprint your low back and lose the lumbar curve. And we test that by going to our low back and pushing it down into the floor. Can we get the pubic bone to lift? If the pubic bone doesn't lift, then you are already imprinting to your max. And then take the pubic bone away from you, and it kind of feels like you're going into a little bit of a back bend, but really that's a neutral spine. And let's just do that 3 times. Let's imprint the low back, pushing the lowest part of our spine onto the floor, and then take the pubic bone away from you. Feel the hip bones, pubic bones level. Last time, imprint your low back, and then take your pubic bone away from you until the hip bones, pubic bone, and one day the navel will be level. And then try and keep that lumbar curve. Then you have your fingers and just feel the front floating ribs. Now for some of us, the front ribs kind of pop out of our shirt and they stick up more than our hip bones, okay? And that's just a sign that we need to find our back body a little bit more, that our posture could use a little bit of help. So to help us find that, we push into our elbows, we think about the front floating ribs coming to one another, and we lengthen the back ribs away from the pelvis and bring the back ribs down. We then lift up our skull, make sure our nose, our navel, and our pubic bone are in a straight line, and we lengthen the skull away from the belly. Good stuff. We're then going to take our hands to those floating ribs. We're going to hold onto the, actually, let's use our stick. Everybody's got a stick, grab your stick. So just like last week, we broke the belly breath down into 3 floors, we're going to break the rib breath down into 3 floors. And the first is the bottom floor, which is the floating ribs. So those ribs that we just felt, see if you can find your stick and have it evenly on those 2 ribs. Have your elbows nice and wide, have your palms just very gently resting on the stick. We don't want to be pushing on those floating ribs, okay? See if you can get rid of any wrinkles in your wrists. So some of us wrinkle on the palm side, some of us wrinkle on the thumb side, some of us wrinkle on the pinky side. And wrinkles are kind of like cracks in the foundation of our house. A couple are okay, but we want to avoid them as much as we possibly can, okay? Now breathe into the bottom ribs. Inhale to feel the ribs evenly lifting up into the stick. Exhale to feel the ribs evenly dropping down underneath the stick. Hi guys. You might even be able to use your peripheral vision to see your stick and to notice if one rib cage pops more than the other. A lot of us have a habitual twist through our spine. It's not right, it's not wrong, but it's not optimum, so we want to work on that. Now that we found the basement of the chest and rib breath, let's find the room on the right. So if we broke the chest breath down into bottom floor, middle floor, top floor, like a tic-tac-toe chart, you want each of those floors to have a right room, a left room, and a middle room. So let's take our stick and we're going to bring it to the right room. So like a teeter-totter, we're going to bring that stick towards the floor on the right side and up on sort of the left side. So the stick is going to touch the floor on the right and it's going to be lifted like a teeter-totter on the left. You can bring your arm in a little bit closer if you like, but let it be a little bit loose. And then inhale to breathe into the right rib, the floating rib, bottom floor. Exhale to feel that sinking, shrinking, contracting. And you're not pulling, but you're just using the hand on the top of that stick almost to feel that you're breathing into that space. And you might be able to see it on my body, but as I inhale into that right rib, my stick lifts up, like the weight on the bottom side got heavier. And then as I exhale, it's like the front rib drops and the weight on the top side of the teeter-totter gets heavier. And it might be a tiny movement, but eventually it's a pretty decent movement as we breathe into the right room on the bottom floor of the rib cage. Let's take 3 more breaths into that right room on the bottom floor of our rib cage. And then we're going to take our teeter-totter stick to the left floating ribs. And again, I'm going to take my left arm, I'm just going to hold the base of that stick, almost like a really heavy kid on the bottom of a teeter-totter. And then my right hand is going to be the lighter kid on the teeter-totter. It's going to hold the stick gently, but it's going to move with the stick. So I'm not trying to resist the ribs. I'm just trying to observe how they can move with the breath. So as I inhale, I'm going to breathe into the bottom floor of my left room. Exhale, feel it sinking. So left floating ribs, inhale, expand, out to the side, out to the front. Exhale to feel that left floating rib sinking, shrinking, contracting. It's ideal if we have a weight on the belly acting like Samana Vayu so that we're no longer breathing into our strong area. Most of us are quite good at breathing into the belly, so we're using that salt bag or that bag of rice to keep that space from filling so that we can train a different part of our body, a different part of our lungs. And just like we have a million different yoga poses to strengthen different parts of our body, we want to have different ways of strengthening the different parts of our lungs so that we can strengthen where we're weak and we can ease off where we're strong, because our strength will become our weakness and our weakness has absolutely every ability to become our strength. And then place your stick beside you. Now take your hands onto your ribs, but get your hands quite close to the floor. So you're kind of side. You can have your thumbs on the outside. Sometimes I like to have the backs of the hands on my ribs, like I'm holding onto my ribs with the backs of my hands. And then we're going to take our weight, if we have a weight. If we don't have a weight, we're going to move a block, and we're going to bring it onto the front floating ribs, okay? We're going to hold the side ribs. Now I want us to think about breathing into the back ribs. So now we can feel our back floating ribs. We call them our manta ray ribs on the floor. And I want you to inhale to fill the floor without the front floating ribs or the side floating ribs moving. Just worry on breathing into the back floating ribs. So essentially, if we're thinking of the basement of our rib cage house, we're breathing into the back wall of our lowest floor on our rib cage. And if you're like, what the hell is she talking about? Just breathe into your back. Remembering that that back wall of the basement of your rib cage has a room on the right, a room in the middle, and a room on the left, like the bottom of a tic-tac-toe chart. And then once you start to bring awareness into breathing into the back ribs, let it come to the side ribs, and then let it come to the front ribs. And we're still just thinking floating ribs. Let's take 5 more breaths here. Use those nostrils, expand them like you're trying to drop a couple marbles that are blocking your nostrils, and expand your nostrils all the way up into your skull. when that feels complete, just let your arms come beside you, palms facing up, and return to your natural breath. And sometimes when we start to get really finicky and refine our breath, we get a little dizzy, like the cells of our body are having a party, having a cocktail, and that's good. That's oxygenating your blood. Then when you're ready, you're going to remove the weight from your body, and let's roll off onto our left side. So we're going to lay on our left side. If it's comfortable for us to lay on our arm, we're going to lay on our arm. If it's not comfortable for us to lay on our arm, we're going to put something underneath our head so that we've got a neutral neck. And I'll show you that in a sec. I'm just getting this high def in the right place. So I've got my props handy. I'm lying on my left side. So most of us have 2 blocks. So if I had 2 blocks and I have a bad shoulder or a neck, I might want to put a block underneath my head or a pillow. If it's comfortable for me to have my arm underneath my head, you see how that makes my neck neutral? Great. Okay? I'm going to take 1 or 2 blocks depending on what I have. I'm going to put it between my knees. I'm going to get my ankles nice and active to start with. Okay? If I have a second block, I'm going to place that second block not on my floating ribs, but a little bit higher, kind of mid ribs. I'm going to bring that sort of elbow over my arm, over my block. So we work the floating ribs, which are more angular. Now we want to go to chest level. So basically nipple level. I'm going to put a block there. I'm going to place my arm over that. I'm just going to have my fingers, I'm going to feel my fingers against my abdomen. So we're firing up our legs. So I'm not letting that ankle drop down because that would be kind of slacking. I know my legs aren't working. So I'm going to lift my ankle so it's as high as my knee. Good stuff. And then I'm going to inhale to feel, so I'm looking for sort of nipple height, side ribs. Inhale to breathe into the upper part of your body, the right side. Feel the arm lift, feel the hand slide. Exhale to feel that rib sinking, shrinking, contracting. So if I broke my ribs down into 3 floors, I'm now on the middle floor, room on the right. Let's take 5 more breaths here. When those 5 breaths are complete, I'm going to keep that block at nipple height. I'm going to place it behind me so that it's touching my back ribs, right? It's touching my body. And then ideally, if I have 2 blocks, I'm going to place 1 block between my feet at medium height, and I'm going to keep my knees apart, right? If I don't have blocks, that second block, I can just float my legs at a 90-degree angle and rest whenever I want to. But we're not going to allow the knees to be more narrow or higher than the ankles. We're looking for neutral rotation. Block is at nipple height at my back body, and then I'm going to put my elbow on my side ribs, and I can have my fingers on my floor, or I can have my hand floating, or I can have my arm up in the air, whatever I fancy, right? But then I want to first breathe into my back ribs. So as I breathe into middle floor, back body, I can feel my back ribs pushing that block backwards. And then as I exhale, I can feel my back ribs coming away from that block a little bit. And I'm trying not to breathe into my side ribs. I've got my forearm there and I'm encouraging that space to stay breath free so that I can isolate and strength train my back body breath. And if you're new to back body breath, if you're even getting it in the slightest, that's fabulous. Breaking it down into 3 floors is a heck of a lot for most people's breathing practices, but some of these folks have been breathing with me for 15 years. So if we can start to break it down into the 3 floors of the rib breath. Look, I just made my block fall over. That's good. If you can make it a block domino, fabulous. But don't angry kitty back. So without your spine moving, think about breathing into the back ribs. And I love this 90-degree angle leg because you'll notice if you start to twist, right? If I bring my knee back, of course I can cheat. So I want to bring my knee forward. And if I keep cheating and that knee keeps drawing back, then I would take the block from between my feet and I'd put it between my thighs so that I don't twist. And then you still see if you can domino that block behind you without the pelvis moving. And rest your leg whenever you need to, but we do want to try and find those legs because they're part of a Panavayu. Now that we've found the back body, let's go back body, side rib, front rib. And you can even bring your hand down in front if you like. And we're still working middle floor. Remembering with the breath, it's 0 agitation, 0 stress. Let's go 3 more breaths here. Middle floor, room on the right. And then when that's complete, remove the block from between your feet, let the legs relax, and just find your natural breath. So essentially we've done kind of the middle body and middle floor, room on the right. So let's see if we can bring it up into the top floor. So again, we've got the floating ribs would be your bottom floor of the ribs. Sort of nipple height would be the middle floor. Sternum, collarbones, like C7 at the back of our bottom of our neck would be the top floor. So I find breathing into my armpit when I'm on my side, I like to put a stick in my armpit at the armpit angle. It gets right in there. If I don't have a stick, I could use a block. It's just a little bit more awkward. Use what you got, right? So if you have a stick, put a stick in your armpit, wrap your arm over. You can even hold on to the stick. Good. Lift your leg. This time without the blocks. Let's lift the leg to a 90. Fire up both sets of feet. Get your knees stacked. Get your ankles stacked. And breathe into your armpit. You could even use your fingers to hold on to your collarbone. You could even take the hand of your left hand and place it on your trapped shoulder area. See how I bend my elbow? I bring my hand behind. I could even touch my C7 with the base of my thumb. So now we're just breathing into the room on the right top floor. I can use my peripheral vision to see if my knee starts to hike backwards, to see if my ankle lifts or drops. Resting whenever I need to rest, but we may as well fire up those legs and get more bang for our buck. Think of that Samana Vayu. So like there was a heavy, heavy salt bag on your lower abdomen, pull your belly back so that we can really move the breath up into our neck and our collarbones. Let's take 5 more breaths here. When those 5 breaths are complete, relax your leg, place your props beside you. Just find your natural breath, let that kind of settle. Nice, smooth, even breaths. And see if you might be able to bend your elbows so that your hand is kind of up in the air. See if your other arm can come up and you can grab the opposite elbow. If that's not happening, give yourself an outrigger by having that same 90-degree angle arm but having it out in front of your chest. Good. Lift up that right leg, take the right thigh back, and see if you can straighten that right leg without twisting at all. Good. Lengthen your armpit away from your ankle and just breathe into the right ribs. Bottom floor, middle floor, top floor. Rooms on the right. Front, back, sides. So like an apartment, think about having 3 rooms stacked on the right side of your rib cage. Remembering that all 3 of those rooms have a back wall, a side wall on both sides, a front wall, a ceiling, and a floor. And breathe into that entire right rib cage. Let's take 5 more breaths here. And then when those 5 breaths are complete, stack your knees, stack your ankles, let your arm come beside you, relax, find your natural breath. Good stuff. And then from here, let's push ourselves up and let's come down to the other side. Let me just swap this up. So now we're all gonna lie on our right side facing the TV. So same rules apply. Thighs at a 90-degree angle with our belly if we can. If that's too hard, we can take our thighs back. Ideally, we're gonna rest our head on our arm, and you see how that gets me in a nice neutral neck, neutral spine, especially if I sit into that left butt. But if that's not working, I can put a block or a pillow underneath my head with my arms straight out in front of me. That's gonna be more mellow on my neck and my shoulders, okay? So we started with the block between our knees, good stuff. And then we had the second block at nipple height. So kind of find that nipple, put your arm over, good stuff. And then just let that arm kind of be heavy on the block at nipple height. And then rest your hands on your rib cage so you can feel that movement with the ribs. We're not resisting it, but we're just observing it. Our ankle is as high as our outer knee, our feet are active, and we're sitting our butt into a chair. Like there was a bench underneath our booty and we're sitting into our booty. Particularly sitting into that left butt so that we're not shortening on the left side. And that'll help us introduce the waist on the right side. And just like we did on our back, we lengthen the pubic bone away from the navel to keep the lumbar curve active. And then let's breathe into that block. Inhale, feel that block lifting up, side ribs expanding. Exhale, feel the block, side ribs contracting. So essentially, we're looking at breathing into the room on the left of the middle floor of our rib cage. Even if you're just breathing into your side ribs, you're doing fabulous. Let's take 5 more breaths there. And then when those 5 breaths are complete, you're going to take that block, keeping it at a nipple's height. You're going to see if you can put it behind your body and have it touching your back body. So you've got something to feel there. And then take your block and place your block between your feet. Try and keep your knees as high as your ankles, but if at any point that knee starts to drop, just move the block back between your knees. Use your vision and see if you can keep an eye on those knees to notice when that top knee is moving back. Good. And you can have your hand up in the air. You can have your hand down on the floor. You can have your arm out in front of you. You can feel your ribs. But we're going to try and isolate the movement into the back body because it's harder than breathing into the front or the side, right? It's more challenging. So even if you're just thinking about doing it, you're one step closer to doing it. So be patient. Before you can go for a run or play the piano, you got to think about doing it first. So pull in your belly, think about using the intercostal muscles to not breathe into your side and front ribs, and inhale into your back body. Feel the back ribs, back intercostal muscles between the rib cage expanding back into that block, which is gently touching your body. And then exhale to feel the back ribs coming away from the block. And if you can domino the block without that top knee moving, bam. Good work. Usually takes me at least a few before I can get a domino effect. And I can always know which side is stronger because I can usually domino on my right side easier than my left side. So then I spend more time working my left. You might be dominant on the right. You might be dominant on the left. Good info. Usually we're dominant on the right because we've got our heart in the left side of our lungs. Our left lungs are already smaller because the heart's there, it's bigger, they're anatomically smaller. And then we tend to be a little tighter muscularly around the heart. And so that's why we're usually right dominant with our breathing. Now that you've found the back body, let the breath expand from the back body to the side body to the front body, moving the block between your legs as you need to. I usually breathe into my back body first, then my side body, then my front body, going from my weakest length to my medium length to my easiest strength. And then when I exhale, I just visualize a balloon in that left room of the middle floor of my rib cage, and I think of that balloon evenly contracting. And then I inhale to expand, back, side, front, because I tend to be weaker in the back and the side. And then as I exhale, I think about it evenly contracting. I don't try and break it down too much to the side, front, and back. That creates less tension for my mind because exhales are usually more stressful than inhales because we're like, when am I going to get that breath? So you want to slow down that exhale, make it as smooth and even as you can so you can train yourself to exhale without tension. Think about your nostrils expanding like you're dropping marbles and try and smooth out the inhale and exhale so that one day they're equal length. And so that one day there's no rushing the beginning and the end of the inhale or exhale. So the rush sounds like this. You can hear I'm rushing at the beginning and the end. So see if you can get rid of that rushing and just smooth out the beginning, the middle, and the end so they're even. Let's take 5 more breaths into this left room on the middle floor of our ribs. Then when those 5 breaths are complete, release your block from between your legs, let everything rest, and just find your natural breath. So next we're gonna find the armpit, right? So I like to use the stick. That's my favorite prop here. I'm gonna put it so that it matches the angle of my armpit, right? So it's a little bit high in the front, a little bit low on the back. And I'm gonna let that arm be a little bit heavy so again, I can feel that connection. I'm gonna bend my right elbow and I'm gonna place that right hand so it's kind of feeling my back body. My thumb can kind of feel my C7, upper neck. My fingers can spread over that left trap. And then I'm going to lift that left leg to a neutral rotation. I'm going to float it up so the ankle, the knee, and the hip are in a straight line. And I'm going to breathe into that. I can even have my left hand come up and feel the collarbone. I can feel the left side of the sternum. And so this room I love because you can feel the ceiling of this room, right? So this is the top floor, room on the left. I can feel the ceiling. I can feel the armpit, which is the side wall. The floor is in my imagination. The room, the opposite wall is kind of close to the spine. I might be able to even feel the spine if I'm well trained. And this is breathing into the heart, the top of the heart and the back of the heart, which is incredibly healthy. Inhale, feel that room expanding. You could go back, side, and then front, whatever you fancy. Let's take 5 more breaths here. And then once those breaths are complete, let the knees and ankles stack. Place your stick beside you. Good stuff. And just take a moment. Let that settle. And then maybe it's comfortable to grab onto your elbows with your arm over your chest. If that's not comfortable, give yourself an outrigger, but try and keep your shoulders stacked, hips stacked. We're gonna straighten out that left leg. We're gonna lift that left ankle so it's as high as the hip. We're gonna reach the elbows away from the ankle. We're gonna lengthen out the two sides of the torso, and let's breathe into that entire left side of the rib cage. Broadening the nostrils. Let's take 5 more breaths here. When those 5 breaths are complete, you're going to stack your knees, you're going to release your arms, you're going to find your natural breath. And then we're going to push ourselves up. We're going to come into tabletop position. Okay, so from here in tabletop position, our thighs are at a 90 so that our knees are directly, let me get this sorted, give me 2 secs here. Our knees are directly underneath our hips, our thighs are at a 90. Now for most of us, we need to have our wrists ahead of our shoulders. We're going to tuck our toes, we're going to take our salt bag or our block and we're going to place it on our sacrum, okay? We're going to find every single one of our fingers and root them down, and we're going to root the entire circumference of the palms down. Good. Toes are tucked. Now we're going to lift the back rib cage, right? So the floating ribs, the back floating ribs, the mantray ribs are lifted. Nice neutral spine. We're going to lift up into the back of the skull. And then we're going to bring our butt back. We're going to try and keep our pelvis level. We're going to touch our seat towards our feet, and then we're going to inhale to come forward. We're going to take our shoulders to where it's comfortable. You know, if we go further, it's harder on the wrists, so we listen to our bodies. We exhale to bring the seat back without dropping whatever's on our pelvis, and then we inhale to come forward. Now I want you to think about a tug-of-war between the hip flexors and the armpits. As our butt goes back, our hip flexors, our pelvis is winning the tug-of-war, and then as our shoulders come forward, our armpits are winning the tug-of-war. But there's always 2 directions, right? So just because the armpits are winning the tug-of-war doesn't mean the hip flexors are giving up. The hip flexors are pulling back as the armpits are pulling forward, and the armpits are pulling forward as the hip flexors are moving back. Good. Just breathing here, nice, smooth, even breaths. Just feeling that weight on the pelvis. Lifting your back, floating ribs, really trying to sustain that feeling of a neutral spine. And then let's stop with the knees right underneath the hips. Let's push into our fingers. Let's push into our palms. Bang out a couple shoulder push-ups here, moving the humerus bone in and out of the shoulder sockets so we see that range. So my back stays the same, and I'm just taking my upper arm bone. I pull it in as close as I can, gross. I take it as far out as I can, equally as gross. And then I want to find the compromise where I'm taking the arms out of the shoulder sockets, but I can still shake my head for no. Good stuff. And then once I find that, I'm going to take my shoulders to my ears. I'm going to take my shoulders away from my ears. I'm going to take my shoulders up towards my ears, my shoulders eating my neck, can't say no. I'm going to take my shoulders away from my ears, equally as gross, right? Too much of a good thing, too much of a good thing, either way we go. So then we find those shoulders in optimum position where they're away from the ears, but the armpits are lifting up into the shoulders so that my neck is supported and I can shake my head for no. Right, so we have a range with the humerus bones, we have a range with the shoulders, and find a nice compromise where your neck is like, yeah, just right. Now see if you can float that right arm up. Doesn't have to float all the way up. Make sure you don't feel the left wrist. If you feel the left wrist, you're going to move it forward and you're going to use your fingers and your palms more. You're then going to straighten out your left leg, and without the pelvis changing, you're going to lift that left foot off the floor, lift your belly, lift your ribs. Then without the spine changing, we're going to do a shin lift with that left leg. We're going to straighten and bend that left leg without the left thigh moving at all. So just firing up our legs here. And then we're going to bend that left knee to a 90, and then we're going to raise the roof with that left thigh. Zero rotation as we take the foot to and from the ceiling, lifting our belly off the floor and balancing our weight on our pelvis. Raise the roof. Good. And then lift that foot to hold, reach that arm forward, straighten that left leg, and just hold here. Strengthening our abdominal muscles, strengthening our intercostal muscles so that we're building a good foundation, not only for our spines, for our pelvis, but also for our lungs and our organs. And then drop those limbs down. Find your fingers, find your palms, find your toes. Good stuff. Find the entire circumference of that right palm, push into all 10 fingers, float that left arm up. Lift your ribs, lift your belly, straighten the right leg, lift the right thigh. Beautiful. Find a shin lift here. So we're straightening and bending that right leg without the shoulders moving, without the spine moving, without the pelvis moving. Good stuff. No shoulders eating neck, no arms sinking into the shoulders. And then stop with that right leg at a 90 and raise the roof with the right foot. Up and down, up and down. If you feel your right wrist, bring your left hand down. Raise the roof to hold, keep lifting the thigh, straighten the leg, and pull both limbs out of your body. Fix your gaze down, think about lengthening the two sides of the torso. Everybody breathing. Finding the deepest, fullest breath you can. And then bring that hand down, bring that knee down. You can keep this on your pelvis if you like, or get rid of it as you come into a puppy pose. And then if you're going to choose to come into a down dog, ditch the weight, really tug of war between the armpits and the hip flexors, and take yourself into down dog, but don't compromise the back. Keep optimum conditions for your lungs. Nice, smooth, even breaths here. Feel the entire circumference of the palms rooting. Feel all 10 fingers rooting. Shoulders aren't eating the neck. Shoulders aren't eating the arm bones. Those shoulders, they just like to do it all, right? Instead of letting everybody else do their job, those shoulders are like, I can do it. I'm going to do it all. I'm not asking for help from the elbows. So don't let those shoulders carry more than their own weight. And again, you can be doing this in puppy pose, whatever you fancy. Let's take 10 more breaths here. Yoga is all about creating optimum positions for the lungs so that we can breathe. So eventually, the whole purpose is to do breathing exercises. Just sit all day long and breathe. When those 10 breaths are complete, we're gonna return back into tabletop position. We're gonna lift our belly, we're gonna lift our ribs. Walking our hands to our knees, we lift our knees. We walk our hands to our feet. We bend the knees as much as is humanly possible for us. We bring our hands onto our knees and we lift our entire back body as one big unit. All right. So if you have 2 blocks, use 2 blocks. If you don't have 2 blocks, don't worry about it, okay? We're gonna do some foot stuff. Have your stick. You don't have a stick, don't worry about it. Have it handy. So I want my feet to be a hip's distance apart, so I put my 2 fists on my block, or on the floor if you don't have 2 blocks, right? I'm gonna notice where that is, and that's where the center of my arch is gonna be. My big toe mound and baby toe mound are on the blocks, and I'm gonna curl my toes over the top of the block. I'm gonna stand with both feet on the blocks. Good. And before we use the stick, have the stick handy, you don't need it right now. We're gonna bend our knees over our feet slightly. So we really found the room on the right and the rooms on the left of our ribs, but we haven't spent a ton of time finding the center line. So we're gonna find our hands in Namaskara, and we're gonna push. You're gonna stay on your blocks, you're gonna keep your knees a little bit bent, you're gonna pull in your belly. So Samanavayu, belly pulls back, flesh the butt down, good stuff. Stay where you are. You're gonna take your hands into Namaskara, and we want the wrists to be wrinkle-free, so we don't want the wrists ahead of the elbows, we don't want the wrists behind the elbows, we want the wrists in line with the elbows. And then we're gonna bring our thumbs to our chest. So this is the center, this is 3 rooms stacked in the middle of our rib cage, right? So we're gonna rub the thumbs to the basement, to the middle floor, to the top floor. Middle floor, basement, middle floor, top floor. We're just gonna go up and down, middle rooms of our rib cage. This is also a meridian in acupuncture, which is stimulating our lungs. Ooh, look at these yogis and these Chinese medicine guys all agreeing. Use your thumbs to root into that middle room of the basement of your ribs, middle floor and top floor of your ribs. So from your sternum to the bottom of your floating ribs. Good stuff. And then stop with the thumbs on your sternum. Root your thumbs into your sternum and breathe into the top floor middle room. And if you're using blocks, let your toes curl over the blocks. Noticing if there's more weight in the big toe or the baby toe of your foot. Noticing if your knees want to come together or if your knees want to go apart. Some of us are knee knockers, some of us are wobbly knees, and our knees go apart. Breathe into your sternum. Breathe into the right side of your collarbone. Breathe into the left side of your collarbone. Yes, that's a thing. Take 5 more breaths here, right into our sternum. And then when those 5 breaths are complete, let your arms come beside you, palms forward, straighten your legs, but keep your knees a little bent. Slow down your heart rate by slowing down your breath and just relax your toes. And then we're going to zip our bellies. We're going to pull our bellies in, flesh the butt down. We're going to bend our knees. Now we're going to hover our toes. So our toes aren't curling like a bird, right? But they're not lifting like a Barbie. They're level. And then we're going to look at our toes and we're going to see if our big toes are higher than our baby toes. And then I want you to kind of go in and out on your feet. So I have pretty good range here, so you can see how my knees move. When I come to my big toe edge of the foot, when I come to my baby toe edge of the foot. So I'm just going from the big toe mound through all the toe mounds to the baby toes. And I'm just noticing how that affects the rotation of my knees. Extremely valuable information. The only thing that I'm actually physically moving here is my feet. right? I have a lot of range, so obviously you can see that. I'm not thinking about moving my knees, I'm just moving my feet. Now find the weight even on the toe mounds, from baby toe mound to big toe mound, good stuff, so it's even. Look down, see if your toes are even. Look down and see if your knees are truly tracking your feet. 'Tis the season, you guys. It's the season of ankle injuries and knee injuries. Let's not do it. Are your knees level? Are your ankles level? Keep that. Zip your belly. You're going to reach up with your arms like you're holding onto a box. You're going to bring it up. You're going to bring your hands into prayer. You're going to lift your elbows. You're going to bend your elbows. And you're going to place your hands on the top floor, middle room. Good stuff. And if that's impossible, just think about that area. And then inhale to breathe into the C7, which is that bony bit at the back of the neck. Breathe into the bottom, breathe into the top, breathe into the two sides of the C7. Not breathing into the sternum. We just did that. Just breathe into the back body first because it's harder. And this is one of the hardest places to breathe into. So if you're getting nothing there, don't worry about it. Just think about it. Before you can eat a donut, you have to think about eating a donut. Before you can breathe into your C7, you have to think about breathing into your C7. And I visualize a balloon, and I visualize that balloon just expanding back. Like you know how jellyfish move? Breathe into your C7. And then keep one hand on your C7, place one hand on your sternum, and then breathe into your back body and your front body, like expanding and contracting. Accordion, pulling apart the front and the back, and then panini sandwich, front and back coming to one another. Think about the back body and the front body, accordion, and then panini sandwich, bring them to one another. Swap the arms. Two more breaths into your sternum, into your C7. It has a basement of that room. There's a ceiling of that room. There's walls, and there's 8 corners in that room, top floor, middle room. And then let those arms come beside you, palms facing up. And if balance is cool, you can close your eyes. If balance is not cool, keep your eyes open. And then hands in Namaskara, go up and down the lung meridian, the middle room, stacked one on top of the other. Just massage that front body with your thumbs. And then stop on the middle floor, middle room. For this one, again, it's nipple height. Usually the wrists are pretty neutral, but if that's tight on your wrist, just let the palms come apart for today. It's not about the wrist stretch, it's about finding that middle room. And then use your thumbs and the base of your thumb to root back into the chest. And then breathe into that space. And then move it down, lower, and here the thumbs may have to come apart, or you can point the fingers forward and use the wrist to root into the bottom floor of the front rib cage. This is a good one. You feel the floating ribs from their shortest point up top, expanding out and back. And then release your arms beside you, palms facing forward, shoulders relaxed, find your breath. Let the toes relax. And then lift your toes up, but feel your toe mounds even. And just find that for a moment, knees a little bent. And then step off your height. You're gonna hold onto your stick. So remember, you've got walls behind you. You're still in standing because this is gonna be easier for you in standing. And you're gonna take two arms like you're holding onto a block, but your right hand has your stick in your right hand. Good stuff. So holding onto a block, good stuff. We're gonna inhale to bring that right arm straight up like Superman. We're gonna mindfully bend the right elbow, and we're gonna bring our stick onto our spine. The left hand comes out like a T, drops down to halfway to a T, internally rotates, bends, and grabs onto our stick. We then use our stick to push into the bottom two middle rooms of our back. We could even walk our hands down the stick a little bit. If we don't have a stick, we could just use our hands, okay? If we've got a stick, we're pulling the stick apart. Now lean into the back wall of the two bottom rooms and breathe into the two bottom rooms back wall. It gets so cray-cray, I know. Just breathe into your back spine. Feel like the spine is 3 rooms stacked like an apartment, and breathe into the back of your spine. Evenly. Inhale, breathe backwards into the spine. Exhale, feel the spine pulling away from your stick. Now take it from the back body to the middle to the front. Still working on those rooms that are in line with the spine. There's a room in the basement, there's a room in the middle floor, and there's a room in the attic. What you do today? Well, I breathed into my spine using a rolling pin. Two more breaths into that spine. Back, middle, front. And then release the left arm. Remember, you got a ceiling, a wall. Watch that stick. Bring it up, bring it down. Good stuff. Take the stick into the left hand. Bring your arms up like you're holding onto a box, the shoulders distance apart. Left arm comes up like Superman. Bend the left elbow. Put the stick in line with your spine. So for optimum rotation, right arm comes out to the right like a T. Good. We bring it halfway to a T, but we don't shorten the torso. We internally rotate. Then it's a tug of war between the elbow and the armpit. We don't compromise the spine, because then we can't breathe. We grab our stick. If we don't have a stick, we don't worry about it. We just lean our hands into our back body. Maybe some of us can walk the hands towards one another, right? And then lean your spine into your stick or your hands. Pull the elbows away from one another. Right to the floor, left to the ceiling. Shoulder heads back. So the tendency here is to bulge and shorten. Not optimum for our spine. So get your armpits level, get your hips level. Good stuff. Find your feet. Push into your feet, bend your knees. Remember what it was like to have a sandbag or a block on your belly. Pull your belly back. Flesh a butt down. Breathe into your spine, particularly the bottom 2 floors of your spine. Just into the back wall to start with. And then let that breath work up the back wall of your spine, up to the C7, right up the neck into your skull. Of all the things I teach, right, breath is the most important. We're going to do it all week long. Nothing like taking 2 weeks of your life and learning how to breathe better, because it's something you use every single second of every single day. Yeah, we strengthen our quads, we strengthen our calves, let's strengthen our lungs. And then once we find the back body, let's find the middle body and then the front body. Take 3 more breaths here. And then release that right arm, mindful of your wall and whatever. Bring that left arm around, put your stick on the floor, let your palms face forward, shoulders back, close your eyes, and just breathing. Nice, smooth, even breaths. Broaden your nostrils, think of all the spaces in your lungs, from the belly to the ribs. Think of, we found 6 floors, 18 rooms. Breathe into them. Start with your weakest room and fill that room first. It's an apartment building of breath, and that apartment building has back walls, front walls, a hell of a lot of corners. 148 corners. I think. And then when that's complete, we're going to come down. You can come through a squat if you like, but most of us can bring our hands onto our knees, our butt back, bring our hands onto the floor, walking out into a table, bringing our knees onto the earth. We can roll over our toes, coming onto the soles of the feet, or we can take our feet out to one side, hands out to the other. I apologize, I used up a lot of time breathing. I got a little obsessed there. We'll finish with intense leg stretches and we'll go a little bit over time. But if you don't have an extra 5 minutes, just do Shavasana and finish there. Hands behind the thighs, make a nice C, and then we're going to come down one disc, one vertebra at a time. We're going to start by hugging the legs into us, relaxing the shoulders, taking a few breaths here. And if you're going right into Shavasana, you can do so after you feel your low back releases. If you want to do a couple minutes of intense leg stretches, you can bring your left foot onto the floor. You can take your right foot into the strap, straightening out the right leg. Bring your elbows onto the floor. Root your elbows, and then see if you can get a lumbar curve. So the first thing you do is you imprint your low back, right? And then you know that you've not got a lumbar curve, and then you take the pubic bone away from you to find that lumbar curve, right? And if you can't imprint your low back, then you know you're imprinting it, so you take the leg away from you until you can imprint and arch your back. And then you want to keep the arch. As you pull down with your hands, you're going to lift up with your foot. And if you want to make it deeper, you straighten out the left leg. And if you still want to make it deeper, you take your elbows out to the side, drawing the leg to you, but you keep a lumbar curve. We're just going to do 2 minutes per side. Find your feet, find your elbows, keep that nice neutral spine, close your eyes. And now that we can feel our right hip, because we're stretching it out, we're stretching out that right hamstring, start with the breath in that right hip. So bottom floor of the belly, room on the right, and then allow that breath to spread from the bottom floor, room on the right, aka right hip. Let it spread up to all of the 18 rooms. If you don't have a strap, just use your hands behind your thigh. Let's take 10 more breaths, just like that, right here. Keeping those legs just as active as when we were doing the 90-degree angle leg exercises. Legs very, very active. are complete for you. Release your strap and just see if you can hold the leg there. And that's good info. If you can't, then that's an indication that you are pushing yourself too far out of your healthy range of motion. And then bend your knee, interlace your fingers, and just release that psoas hip flexor by bringing it into a half wind remover, drawing that right leg to you. Bent knee. And then releasing that leg, letting that foot come onto the floor. Bend both knees, find a lumbar curve. Place the strap over the left foot. Start with the thigh at 90 or further away from you. Bring your elbows to the floor and then imprint and arch your low back. So imprint your lumbar curves and find it. If you can't imprint and arch, then take your leg away from you or bend the knee so that you can imprint and arch that low back. And then find a little bit of a lumbar curve so you're cooking with gas and getting some results. And then pull down on the strap as the foot lifts up into the strap. Elbows are on the floor so that the neck and the shoulders are relaxed. Spine is neutral, breath is optimum. Feel free to straighten the right leg if you want more. Feel free to take the elbows out to the side and the hands out to the side if you still want more. Sit your left butt into a chair and fire up those legs like we've done all class. Use every single one of those leg muscles. And then start the breath in the left hip. Bottom floor, room on the left. It has a back, it has a front, it has floor ceilings, walls to the right, walls to the left, and it has 8 corners. Start by breathing into the left hip and then allow the breath to move from the left hip into the other 18 rooms. I think it's 172 corners. I'll have to do that math. Let's take 10 more breaths here. When those 10 breaths are complete, release your strap and see if you can hold your leg there. And then bend that left knee, interlace your fingers, left hand on top of right over that shin, and just pull that left leg in to release it. Little half wind remover on that left side. And then let that left foot come down. If you have any sensitivity in your back, bend your knees, put a bolster or a pillow underneath your thighs, and then eventually straighten one leg, straighten the other leg, arms out beside you, palms facing up, shoulders relax, close your eyes. No longer controlling the breath, but just finding your natural breath, observing the natural ebb and flow of your breath within your still body. Eyes are closed. Continuously focusing on your body from the inside. Feel the space within your skin. And slowly, gently starting to wake up your body from the inside by deepening your breath. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Nice big inhale, stretch your arms up towards the sky. Exhale to let your arms fall down heavy as you start to bend your knees, walking your feet towards your seat. Exhale to roll off to one side. Nice inhale and arm strength to push yourself up. Make your way to a comfortable seated position. We're going to end with a humming Om before we dedicate the merit of our practice. May we use this class so that all beings may find happiness. May we all be free of disease. May we see what is auspicious and may no one suffer. Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your practice. Namaste! Namaste, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Sorry, friend, we didn't do a strappy shoulder series, but we sure did a lot of breathing. I'll see you guys next week. I promise we'll do strappy shoulders then. Be well, everybody.
Thank you.
My pleasure.